Hi everyone, welcome to the Balanced Natural Health podcast, where we share insights from the ancient science and timeless wisdom of Chinese medicine. Information from the old natural ways of healing can support us in leading more beautiful, more vibrant and more vital lives today. In this podcast, I share simple, natural and accessible tips that you can incorporate into your everyday life for more vibrant health and wellness. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Maz and welcome back to episode 50 of the podcast. In today's episode, I will share some further musings on what we touched on briefly in the previous episode, episode 49, talking about the year of the fire horse and all of the energies that are coming through, which some people are saying will go towards the growth of AI and the proliferation of AI. And there is another way that can go as well. So my question that I've been pondering and having lots of really rich and beautiful conversations with over the last few months and even longer actually is about what does it mean to be human? What is the place of AI? What are we creating with our engagement with AI, ChatGPT, Claude, and all of the generative AI models? What kind of world and reality are we contributing to? And what is the true cost of AI? We hear about all of the environmental or energy costs from a fuel perspective of running the machines that generate all of this content that's just flooding the world around us. But what about the cost to our own life force energy, to our chi, and the cost to our health? Is there actually a cost to our health? Does it interfere with living our truest, most expression of body, mind, and soul? And what does Chinese medicine have to say on the topic and Taoist medicine? And this is something that I've had a lot of thoughts about as I've watched the flood of AI in our mainstream society and watched as things become more and more airbrushed, more and more unreal, and more unalive, because the reality is that everything that we touch and create through our living beings is imbued with some of that life force energy, that living chi that is in us and in all living things in the natural world around us. And this is what is missing in the echo chamber of generated stuff that's generated by non-living entities. So, in this episode, I'll share with you some perspectives from Chinese medicine and from Taoist medicine about what it means to be human, what true health is, what our definition of health is, and what our unique role as humans is here on this realm. We will ponder the question of what are we empowering? Where are we placing our power? Because we know that where attention and intention goes, that's where energy flows, that's where chi flows. This is how we practice qigong and many forms of energy healing. It's with the impeccable nature of our focus and our attention. And so when we continue to keep placing that energy, that chi, that living life force outside of us, are we taking power away from within ourselves? Are we disempowering ourselves? And what are we empowering outside of ourselves? Are we outsourcing our life force energy? And what is the cost? And then I'll share some rituals and habits and invitations of different things that we can practice in order to come more into connection with that wellspring of life that is within us all, that deep life force energy that flows through us as living beings and that can guide us. Because the reality is that even though we've been maybe encouraged or invited to look at AI as some great bastion of intelligence and all-knowingness, that is simply not the case. It's just a collector of information, and not all of that information is true or even accurate. I'm going to share some interesting conversations that I've had with the AI overview in Google, where it was telling me blatantly incorrect information and then justifying why I was doing that. So things like times and dates of full moons that were wildly inaccurate. And yet we're giving our power away to it in taking its advice on how to make choices or how to act in our living lives. So, yes, I'll share some different things that we might weave through our daily life in order to bring us more into connection with that current within, to bring us more into empowerment and embodiment, and how we can make choices from there. So, to begin, I'd like to share some concepts from Chinese medicine thought about what it means to be healthy, what it means to live a rich and fulfilled and complete life, to embody our existence here on this earth completely. And there are several concepts I'd like to talk about, and one is about the fire element and its connection to creation, to our heart, and to our soul, our shen, which is what we call it in Chinese medicine, which equates to our soul or spirit, our consciousness, our present awareness, and how this also is connected to our sexual organs, our tongue as well. So, organs of creation and what we speak into the world. And I will also share about the three treasures of Chinese medicine: the Jing, Qi, and Shen, or the essence, the Qi, our life force energy, and Shen, again, the spirit. And I will share about the unique position that we see humans as holding between heaven and earth, and our role in being a integrated and capacitated conduit between heaven and earth energy. So our role in grounding the cosmic and etheric energy here on earth, and the importance of having internal coherence and integrity in order to support that process. Okay, so beginning with the fire element. So you may have heard me talk before about the five elements of Chinese medicine, and each are connected to an organ and an organ system, and also to an aspect of our consciousness. And in the case of the fire element, it rules the heart, it rules the life force within, and it's also connected to our Shen, which is loosely translated as our soul or spirit, our present awareness. It's the spark of life that we respond to in someone's eyes. We all carry that divine spark of life force energy within. And interestingly, in Chinese medicine, the heart is connected to the womb and the testes, or the room of sperm, and to the tongue. And it's linked with the bitter flavor. And what is really curious, I've talked about this on a beautiful podcast that I was invited to speak on recently, is that the bitter taste receptors are found not only on the tongue, but also on the heart, in the heart, and in the womb as well. So somehow the ancients understood this connection between those vital organs, which are considered to be organs of creation. So whether we're birthing the divine in material form through the form of a new human, a new soul here upon this earth, or whether we're birthing it through our words and our unique voice and our creation. And I think it's interesting that in this double fire year that I've talked about, so according to the 60-year stems and branches calendar of Chinese thought, we're now in a double fire year of the fire horse. And it's interesting that many people are talking about this being a year that is really going to see the rise of AI. But I think there's also another invitation and an opportunity for us to bring more of this embodied divine creation through our beings, this bringing this fire energy through our beings and creating with our words and our unique voice. And this is a big part of my concern, and why my spidey senses have always felt really ick about engaging in creating content or even modifying content with AI or ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, because in doing so, there is a certain frequency or tone of our unique voice that is modified, that is nullified, censored, possibly. It can happen so slowly that we don't even notice it's happening, but it changes that unique voice. It changes our expression, our connection to other living beings, which is how we connect with our voice as well, and with what we share of our deepest thoughts and everything that pours through us. So this is an interesting thing to consider in relation to this thought of what are we empowering? Where are we placing our life force energy? Are we giving our power away to something that's inert and dead? It's not imbued with life force energy. It's not connected to the heavens and the earth, the cosmos and Gaia, the living being beneath our feet, and the web of life that's all around us that we depend on for life. So we're putting our attention and our power, our questioning into something that's external and not alive, and allowing our living life, our living beings to be guided by that. Or can we maybe turn back towards looking within, towards looking to the world around us for answers as well, towards aligning with the cycles of Mother Nature, the laws of Mother Nature. And I think it's such a potent choice point now that we all face. And it's an individual choice. Everyone's going to have different spots on the spectrum where they sit, but I think it's an important thing to bring to awareness and to consider so that we can make choices consciously. Because, and I'll come back to this again later, like any tool, AI is a tool that can be used to our benefit, but it's when we give our power away that balance shifts. So are we using AI or is it using us? And I see many instances around me where I see that it is using us. It's harvesting knowledge about our thinking patterns, about what it is that makes us human, about how humans react. And there's that famous saying about if you are not paying for the product, you are the product itself. So I wonder what we are participating in with giving so much of our power, focus, attention, and time to something that is not of this living world. So that's my thoughts on the fire element and how it relates to creation and the world that we are creating with our expression and our connection to other living beings. The other idea that I'd like to touch on is that of the three treasures in Chinese medicine. So, in Chinese medicine, everything that we do is about cultivating these three treasures, which are so called because they are the foundation of a vibrant, well lived, long, abundant life. So, the state of our three treasures and how well we cultivate and look after them will depend how quickly we bounce back from injury, how resilient we are, how joyfully and completely we experience this lifetime, also how we move through each stage and season of life. So they are at the root of our health, and they are the Jing or essence, the Qi, our life force energy, and the Shen or the soul, spirit, consciousness, present awareness that I talked about earlier. So you may have heard me talk quite a lot about our chi, our life force energy, if you've listened to me before, but we also tend to our jing, our essence, and our shen, our soul spirit. And these can also be called our pre-heaven endowment or our genetic endowment. So that's the jing or essence. This is what we come into this worldly embodiment with. And it is in a way, our earthly connection. So it's a connection to the earth part of that heaven, human, earth trilogy or trinity. And then we have the Shen or spirit. And this is our connection to the divine, to the great, all that is, to the 0 point field of all possibility, to maybe the Akashic records or the Kordylewski clouds, the big plasma clouds in the sky, maybe to the consciousness of water all around us, and to the abundant wisdom and all knowingness of Mother Nature as well. So that is the Shen aspect. So that can be said to have some relationship to the heavens or cosmos within that trinity of heaven, man, earth. And so everything that we do through practices like nourishing our daily chi to stop us from dipping into our genetic endowment, our essence. So the more that we nourish our daily chi, the less we dip into those deep reserves of energy that are intended to last us through this life. And also, the more that we come into alignment with the expression of our soul or spirit here on this earthly realm or plane or whatever you want to call it within this experience of reality, and the more that we can be a conduit for the divine, for that cosmic energy, that heavenly energy, then the more that we can create heaven on earth and be that connection. And so everything that we do in Chinese medicine is geared towards the cultivation and nourishment of these three treasures. So, for example, we nourish our daily qi, our life force energy, with foods that are well digested, with making sure we have a balance of rest and activity, with processing our emotions so our qi doesn't get snagged or scattered. And in that way, we can avoid having to dip into our deep reserves of Jing or essence, that pre-heaven energy. So I think of that as our long-term savings deposit. It's like a term account that's meant to last us for a whole lifetime, whereas our chi or life force energy is like a daily spending account. So the more that we can make sure that we're well resourced for every day, the less we dip into those deep reserves. And then the Shen is our connection to the source, to all that is, to the greater universe, to Mama Nature. And the clearer that our spirit or our soul, our awareness is, so through practices like emotional alchemy, like moving our emotions, like stream of consciousness journaling, cultivating our awareness with Qigong and meditation. So the clearer and brighter that Shen, the more of that divine, cosmic, heavenly energy we bring through into this embodiment on earth. And we're hearing a lot now about somatic practices, about embodiment, about getting grounded, about being embodied in our body and souls, and rebalancing that over reliance on the mind and the rational aspect. But again, I think when we see how much many are relying on the external mind through AI, we can see that we are moving, in fact, further and further away from embodiment, from deep grounding, from deep connection. Because, and this will bring me to my next point about heaven, human, and earth, when we are deeply embodied in our bodies, in our flesh and blood living bodies, when our mind is connected to our body and our soul, when we have integrity and coherence and alignment with every aspect of our being. So when we know our mind, when we know who we are, when we know our heart, when we know our soul, when we are connected to the whispers of our beautiful beings, to all the messages that they are letting us know all the time. So when we are in integrity, then we are a beautiful conduit between heaven and earth. And that is something that we talk about in Chinese medicine as well. So we understand that humans have a place here connecting the heavenly upon the earth. I mean, I believe personally that all living beings, whether it's animals or trees, flowers or rocks, play that same role. I don't actually place humans above other living beings. However, traditionally in Chinese medicine, all life here on earth, but especially humans, is that connection between heaven and earth. So, in a way, we have a responsibility or maybe an invitation to be that conduit, that hollow bone, that capacitated vessel to allow information from heaven and earth to flow through us. And that is where then inspiration, intuition, divine guidance, inner knowing, new ideas, insight, and yes, intelligence as well spring from. They're informed from the integrity of all aspects of our being. And this is another concern that I have, is that in placing our power in AI, in giving up our reasoning, our maybe sorting through information to see if it has the ring of truth about it, then we are placing all of our power in something that focuses only on one aspect of knowing, of understanding, of perceiving the world, and that is intelligence. So, AI being artificial intelligence, it's using only one aspect of the whole spectrum of thinking. And in fact, there are many others, and many really learned and amazing scientists, for example, like Einstein, who many see as the bastion of intelligence and intellectual brilliance, acknowledged that intelligence is only a servant to intuition and insight. So there's many stories of great leaps of understanding, great leaps in our view of the world that came not from intelligence as such, but from divine inspiration, from following instinct, from following intuition. And my concern is, what are we doing with placing so much attention and intention in this model of artificial intelligence that's external to us? Are we then missing out on our own divine inspiration, on those new leaps of thinking and understanding? And how can we cultivate that quality within ourselves, that connection, to allow more of that power to empower us from within, to light us up from within, and to inform our expression in the world and our contribution to the world around us? because this also has an impact on how we live our lives and how healthy and vibrant we are. Because I see health as being so much more than the absence of disease or symptoms, but rather I see health and a life beautifully lived as us being the most gloriously expressed versions of our true selves. And Carl Jung put this beautifully as well. He said that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And this is what we talk about in Chinese medicine. It's like, how do we live our destiny here? How do we express our genetic endowment, our jing or essence that we have come into this world with through our qi and through our shen, our connection to the source, to the 0 point field of consciousness? How do we bring our unique perspective, our unique fragment of the whole to that? And that is through being completely ourselves and through completely expressing ourselves as well. And also, I believe that being human is about connection. It's about recognizing our place in the great web of life around us. And this is at the heart of Chinese medicine. We understand that health comes from alignment with Mama Nature's cycles and observing her wisdom and her natural laws, but also health is from connection with other humans as well. And how do we connect? We connect with our voices, our ideas. And what I'm seeing in the world now is a dilution or a Beijing or vanilla making of those ideas. Things are being sanitized, they're being airbrushed. The potency, the life force energy behind them is being diluted because everything that we touch, everything that we labor on, that we pour through us is imbued with our life force energy. And you can really feel it. Like, I'm sure I'm not the only one. In fact, I know I'm not the only one because I've had many conversations with people about this where I actually can't be bothered with social media mostly these days because it's a wasteland and an echo chamber of the same reiterated beige slop of AI and the same kind of AI speak. And it's lost its heart. It doesn't speak to my heart anymore. There's no connection there. It's content overwhelm, which is, in my opinion, as a Chinese medicine doctor, further contributing to our disembodiment. I've talked before about the spleen and how our ability to digest our food and our nutrition here on this earth, and our ability also to direct our intention and look after our own intent and rational thought and will, comes also from the spleen. And the spleen is also tasked with digesting mental information and content. And right now we are existing in a flood of data, most of it heartless, meaningless, and it's just filling up space. There's no connection there. It's just an overwhelm that is depleting our spleen energy, depleting the chi that we need to fuel a beautiful, vibrant life. And I also think this goes some way to answering a question that I get often, which is people asking me, how can I get more joy in my life? How can I feel more motivated, more focused? And I think that this is also part of connecting to that fire element within the heart and the shen, the spirit, because the fire element rules joy. And if we are not allowing that fire element to express through us, if we're not flexing the expression or flexing the muscle of expression and connection, communication, then our joy can go by the wayside as well. And if we're not within ourselves, if we're not at home in our bodies, but we're externally somewhere else, then it becomes harder to connect with that joy and inspiration. So I think a big part of reclaiming more joy, more radiance, more connection, more inspiration, more motivation, more focus is coming back home to ourselves. So, as you can probably tell, I'm quite fired up about this topic and what it means for us as humans, what it means for the world that we're creating. But in the interests of not flooding the world with more content and overwhelm, I will start to wrap this up. And there's a few more ideas I'd like to talk about before I do. And the first is that because I'm a scientist, I have tested working with ChatGPT and also AI Overview in Google, because in order to pass my opinion or judgment on something, I like to be informed about it. And what I found, as I touched on earlier, was the mistakes that it was serving up in the information it was presenting me with. So, for example, I wanted to find out what time the full moon was, the most recent one. And with great confidence and assurance, the AI overview in Google informed me that it was on the 19th of March and then told me a whole other little story about the particular name of this moon. And I was like, hello, I think it's actually on the 3rd of March. Isn't that right? And it was like, oh, yes, it is. Yes. Oh, you are correct. I saw your query and I just jumped straight to the new moon thing. And I asked it, why are there so often so many errors? Because this is not the first, it's the last or most recent in a long line of errors that I've seen when I've asked questions. And it said, I'm just designed to provide answers with assurance and confidence in a conversational way. And yet, I see, and people tell me that they often ask AI overview for information about things, and the information is not correct. And the other query that I had with it, because the one thing that I know with certainty I know more about than AI does is myself. So I asked it, tell me about Dr. Maz. And it went on to tell me a lovely story about how I offer 3-hour deep dives, which is not true. It came up with names for protocols that I offer, which I don't offer any protocols. It didn't mention the cheap programs that I do actually offer, but it made up other protocols. And when I questioned it on that, it admitted that, oh, yes, yeah, no, you're right. It doesn't do that. So it was just telling me a story based on what it thought I wanted to hear. So again, I'm curious, like what kind of world are we creating when we're living in an echo chamber of this machine reflecting to us what it thinks we want to hear, and what are we training it to provide us with more of? Like, is it true? Is it honest? Is it authentic? These are the thoughts that run through my mind. And that's something I wonder about with this continued reliance and, I mean, complacency on relying on what AI overview tells us. Are we losing our ability to think critically, to search out information for ourselves, to test for that ring of truth again, in relationship or in regard to the information that we're being served up? And I'll say once again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. I mean, AI exists on a spectrum of machine assistance, of technological assistance. And I think when we use it with consciousness and with awareness, and we weigh up the cost and the benefit, then it's a different thing to just being lulled into a sense of complacency of relying on it to feed us what it wants to feed us. Because the reality is that even if there are no nefarious or dark intents behind it, the information that it feeds us is still fed through the lens or the prism of the creators of it. And who knows what it's generating behind the scenes. Like, there's now that platform for AI agents only to connect with each other. So my question is, for those who use AI as prompts or as a conversational partner, how is our thinking and our own process being shaped by the queries and prompts that are provided by AI? Who is providing that, and to what end? And is it of benefit to us? Are we missing an important piece of the puzzle because, again, we're engaging with artificial intelligence and not artificial embodiment, groundedness, insight, intuition, artificial wisdom? These aren't part of the equation. It's just intelligence. And what these models like ChatGPT and Claude rely on is an aggregation of information only, of data, of which some of it is incorrect, incomplete, biased, and it's missing that essential spark of inspiration, that spark of life, that thing that animates our leaps of faith and insights. I will say the one unexpected gift of the AI boom and the generative content boom has been that myself, as a recovering perfectionist, it's given me the ability to embrace my errors and my imperfections. And when a spelling mistake makes its way through, or I miss a word somewhere, or my grammar is not perfect, I'm now in a place where I can celebrate it because it's a stamp of authenticity. And I see the same in those posts that I do read on socials and content that I do read. When there is a mistake, it just actually strengthens that connection that I have, because not only can I feel that it's a real person behind the words in when I'm reading it and when I'm connecting it, you can feel the difference between something that is imbued with soul and life force energy and something that isn't. It's very obvious. That human touch is there or it isn't, but it does put a little warm glow in my heart just to affirm that this is a real human writing it. And that leads me to another point. And, detractors, to my opinion, might say, well, what about people who aren't naturally gifted writers? Well, there's always ways around that, right? Rather than asking a machine to generate your content. So recently I read a book, and I'm pretty sure the writer said that she was dyslexic or had trouble writing. And so she would dictate her thoughts to a machine, and then it would get transcribed, and she would then reread it and edit it accordingly. So it was her unique voice pouring through with machine assistance. And it was a very different read to reading a book, say, by someone who is a naturally gifted or trained writer. However, even though, there were so many things I would have edited differently or that didn't completely make sense, I could feel her essence. I could feel her spirit, her soul, her life force energy coming through that. And it was engaging. It wasn't perfect, it was clunky, but it was vital and alive, and I loved connecting with it. And again, perhaps that's the silver lining here is releasing that grip on perfectionism and polishedness, because where we find ourselves now is just one point along a long path. I mean, this is a whole other conversation, but we have been airbrushing and photoshopping and polishing up and making perfect many aspects of our life. Like, look at fashion magazines. I mean, my life before Chinese medicine was as a designer, so I spent many hours photoshopping models' faces and making them look more perfect. So this, AI and generative art, generative content hasn't sprung out of nowhere. It's been a slow decline, perhaps, I mean, in my personal opinion, into this dilution of what is real, what is alive, what is imbued with life force. And I guess the invitation is just to consider where we all sit on that. So again, it's going to be personal, it's going to be unique, but I think so long as we come at it with consciousness and with intention, then it changes the nature of our interaction with it. And then perhaps we become not the tool, but it becomes the tool in our hands, and we can use it in ways that are beneficial. Now, one point or one objection that's come up in conversations is, well, it saves time to use AI to repurpose my content or to generate content for me. And yes, it does. But what is the goal? Is the goal just stuffing a content hole, or is it creating meaningful communication that comes from your unique voice, not something that's then been sanitized through the lens of AI or the filter of AI before it gets pumped out and disseminated? And I think that the time and effort and life force energy, the chi that we put into something, makes it glow from within. It makes it weightier, more valuable, more able to be connected to, as opposed to something that's pumped out in a fraction of a second by a soulless machine that's not alive, that's not imbued with that energy. And I do hear also from some of my lovely friends who are saying there's that pressure to pump out content all the time, and they acknowledge that that content is probably only read by other machines. But again, it's like, how are we contributing to the flood of information out there and what that's doing to our own body, mind, and souls? Is it aiding our vitality, our health, our integrity, our coherence, or is it overwhelming? And we can choose to unplug from that as well. And I'm definitely seeing that more and more in the community around me. There's less interaction with social media. People are spending less time on there because they're saying it feels like an echo chamber of repetitive beige slop. And before I finish up and move into some rituals that can help us embody and ground, I'd love to share this quote from a book, The A Icon by Bender and Hannah. I'm about to read this book, but this quote jumped out at me. And it is, if you can't be bothered to write it, why would I be bothered to read it? And that's ultimately the question. I can't be bothered reading stuff that has been generated by AI. It's not worth my life force energy and my time. And it makes me turn away from those creators that use AI to try to connect with me. That's not real for me. And maybe others have a different position, and that's great because we're all different, but I'm just sharing my own thoughts on that. So I know that's been quite the download. Where are we putting our energy? What are we empowering? Where are we putting our life force? So now I'd like to share with you some simple ways that we can call back that power within, that we can empower ourselves, but that we can become more embodied, more grounded, more full of our own life force, and more of a capacitated and vital vessel for that infinite cosmic and earthly chi that is wanting to connect with us and pour through us at all times. And the first of these is connecting to Mother Nature. And this doesn't have to be necessarily going on a big nature hike, but it can be something as simple as getting your feet on the earth, as taking time to study a leaf and the beautiful intricacy of it, or maybe it's a butterfly or dragonfly or a bird, or maybe it's the way that the light is hitting a flower or even a tree trunk, or maybe even your own eyelashes. This has been something that I've been doing for decades, but laying in the sun and feeling the sun's goodness and warmth on my skin, and also watching how the light refracts around my eyelashes and the beautiful rainbows that come from that. It's something that I could contemplate for hours. Or watching the play of light on a droplet or on a spider web or on my dog's beautiful coat. She's beautiful, shiny and black, and when the light hits, you can see all of the refractions of the whole spectrum of the rainbow in her fur as well. Or maybe it's feeling the breeze on our skin. It can also be as simple as stream of consciousness journaling. I'm such a fan of this because it's a beautiful way to work that portal, of that fire portal of the Shen, the soul, the heart, our tongue, our unique voice. So whether it's speaking our truth to each other, or whether it's writing all of our thoughts as they pour through in stream of consciousness, not needing to be perfect, but just for the sake of allowing expression, can be a really beautiful way to come into clarity with our body, mind, and soul, to allow more and more of that insight and inspiration, intuition to come through. Also, listening to the whispers of our body. What is our body speaking to us, and honoring those impulses? So, am I hungry? Do I need to have a drink right now? Do I need to actually step away from the computer and do some really deep, beautiful belly breathing? Do I need to lie down for 5 minutes? Do I need to close my eyes? Do I need to pee? There's so many different impulses and beautiful, vital messages that we're receiving at all times. So the more that we listen to those and honor those, the more is available to us, the more and more they pour through, and the more specific and powerful they can be. Another way, unsurprisingly, is Qigong and also meditation. And this doesn't need to be seated meditation or formal meditation. It can be walking meditation. I've shared this on my socials before, but just walking slowly, slowing down our steps and feeling the touch of our skin upon the earth as our feet make contact and as they move through each step of that walk. Or it could be contemplation on a candle flame, or on the clouds in the sky, or leaves blowing in the breeze, but just allowing time for that stillness, that slowness, allowing time for the busyness to settle so that those messages become clearer as they pour through us once again. And another practice that I might offer is, rather than asking AI for guidance or chatbots for guidance, is ask yourself for guidance, because you know, your soul knows, your whole being knows. And sometimes this can come through more clearly after we have been still, after we practice meditation or stream of consciousness journaling, often to really flex that muscle and bring that coherence to our conduit, to our vessel. But the fact is that the same questions that people ask AI, we can ask of our own soul, of our own inner wisdom, and of the divine, the source, the all that is, the mama nature, the God, whatever you want to call it. We can write them down. We can ask them in our heart and wait for answers. And again, the more that we practice that and we flex that, the clearer those messages become. So I'm actually going to share one of the beautiful guided seated meditations from my Radiant Energy Reset Chi program. I will share that on my YouTube channel, so you can find that by going to the show notes. So that will be up in a few days' time. And if you would like some guidance on how to meditate, that can be a gentle way to begin that process and then to see what pours through. I know for me, sometimes when I meditate, there's insights and answers that are pouring through, even while I'm trying to keep my mind still, but it can take time. Some days it's more than others. So I would invite you just to practice that, to commit to practicing it for a certain period of time and seeing what comes through for you. So I hope that has been interesting, insightful, thought-provoking. Maybe if there's someone that you feel might benefit from this, I'd love for you to share. And let's keep talking about this. Let's have conversations about this. Let's have conversations with ourselves about what our intentions are, what we're hoping to achieve with what we're doing, what kind of world we're creating, because we're all learning, we're all discovering as we go, we're all expanding as we co-create this world together. So thank you so much for listening and wishing you all the very best. See you next time.